I am so happy and proud to announce that I published part 1 of my Oxybenzone magazine. So you can find it here at SAVETHECORALS.CLUB/Oxybenzone, which is here on the website. And here we go. So this is from the Hawaii Senate bill, which clearly explains oxybenzone and octinoxate. So early days of sunscreen. Coco Chanel started the tanning revolution. UVB stands for burn. UVA are the aging rays. And we incorrectly focused on UVB rays for a very long time. And then when the FDA came out with the regulations, they only focused on UVB rays as well, which meant that that's what we focused on. And SPF only stands for UVB rays. And UVB rays are actually seasonal, and they vary with altitude and time of day and everything, and they can be blocked by glass. Whereas, and all sunscreens, and UVA rays, they penetrate through glass, and they penetrate way deeper in the skin. And so with the 1980s came a time of boom and excess and really loose sunscreen regulations, and so they came out with the sprays. And oxybenzone and avobenzone were a very, very, very cheap way to get that UVA radiation once we realized that that was harmful as well. So then here's a timeline explaining, so nothing really happened here, right? And then all of a sudden, bam, Greider introduces UVB, then researchers prove that UVA radiation also causes damage to the skin, and then a year later, the FDA proposes to regulate sunscreens, ignoring the UVA factor, and then only using SPF, which is only a measure of UVB, to measure burning as a measure for the effectiveness of sunscreens, which is a big, big mistake that had very, very big, vast implications. And then 1990, oxybenzone was added to the high production volume challenge program for manufacturing in or importing to the US chemicals more than 1 million pounds per year. And because people prefer clear, easy sprays, and when you buy a sunscreen for your kid, they're usually going to run away from you because they don't like sunscreen, so you buy a spray, and that's literally the worst thing that you can buy. And because children don't have the metabolites to break down oxybenzone, and it has far more toxic byproducts, and it impacts development. So you should not be spraying this on your children, and definitely pregnant women should never be using this. yet it's in the majority of sunscreens. And we think, you know, we're led to believe that, you know, it could be okay. And then it wasn't really until the 2000s that we really saw that oxybenzone had really widespread effects. But here's just a list of a bunch of studies, like important studies kind of, and the things that they found out about oxybenzone and the timing. So see, this was throughout decades, all these things that just verify the people before them and amplify whatever they say. So by 2008, we know that oxybenzone is clearly a toxicant and a health risk. And the EWG published how Americans carry the burden of the toxic sunscreen chemical because the CDC found that 97% of Americans were contaminated with oxybenzone. And it's a penetration enhancer, a chemical that helps other chemicals penetrate the skin, and it's in the majority of sunscreen products. And then typically women have higher levels of oxybenzone than men, but that also could be because of higher use of products. And then recent changes, the FDA actually just came out with a new update that is reviewing all chemical sunscreens and their safety and effectiveness. That's a huge step forward. But up until then, it had been largely unreviewed by the FDA. So the CDC found that the majority of Americans had oxybenzone in them. And why is this? Everything that makes oxybenzone such a good photoprotector also makes it an endlessly toxic contaminant. So the same exact properties that make it so good for sunscreen are exactly what make it so toxic and so ubiquitously toxic to everybody and everything. So that's part one of the Oxybenzone magazine, and I look forward to showing you part two very soon.